Hello, everyone. My name is Emanuel, also known as Mr. Stidz, and welcome to Cyberpunk Day. Today, we celebrate Cyberpunk creators, artists, writers, everyone in between. Today, we bring light to this eerie, fascinating, and dark genre from different media across the world. And also for the stream and for the post that we're going to be making today, make sure to check out our socials to be up to date with everything related to Cyberpunk Day 2022. Everything you see here will be available on our YouTube channel. So don't fret, don't be afraid. You can see this amazing talk in the next couple of days. However, not wasting any time right now, we'll be talking about game mastering tabletop RPG sessions in a cyberpunk setting with these amazing, lovely people we have here today. So I'll be your moderator slash host for this panel, and the rules are simple. We'll go through a series of questions, and everyone will get a chance to provide their insight on the subject.
You terrified me.
What?
The rules are simple. I was like, wait, there were rules? Shit, all my books are in the
It's
other
actually a battle royale. Battle
Why do you
royale.
Sorry,
Three.
swear,
There are
apologies.
no rules.
Yeah.
And also, you get to pick your own cyberware on the run. So
Awesome.
don't
there we go. Cool. I'm getting rippers
Just
because I want to be ripped.
But yeah, no, it's pretty straightforward. And anyone, if you want to bring in more insight on a certain topic that someone brought up, you can feel free to drop in some knowledge or some experience along the way. So it's easy breezy, nothing stressful, nothing complicated. We're here to have a good time and talk cyberpunk. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So we're gonna start with the introductions of everyone that we have here. So we're gonna probably start. Let's go clockwise. That way we can make things simple. What we have here in the setup that we
Do
have.
we all
right
have
now.
the same clock though? No, we don't, right?
This is
No.
I got,
Okay.
You're on my bottom left, so I don't know.
You're the host. Pick people. Go. Roll a
Yeah,
dice.
you just pick.
No, roll a dice. That's so much more fun.
Oh, but I don't have. Oh, I do have
Just
one.
blood
Okay.
ball. Let's just fight it out.
Let's do a D4 then.
There we go. Does this thing have a chat or a dice bot?
No.
Oh, it doesn't.
Okay.
Should always have dice within reach.
So I
I have some.
rolled a. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I rolled a 1. So binary. I'm sorry. You go first.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm BinaryDragon, also known as Paris Aerosmith. I am a GM, and I make the podcast No Latency, Cyberpunk RED Adventure. And Tracie's one of my players.
Hey.
We just started season 2, and we're really excited about it. It's really coming together. You can find out more about my podcast at nolatencypodcast.com. And you should follow me on stuff, because cool. I don't know. Is that what we're doing? I don't know. I'm terrible at pitching.
Yes. No, that's it. You got it.
No
Cool.
worries. Tracie.
Hello, everybody. I am Tracie. I go by Miss Magitek on the internet. I am a tabletop streamer. I do stuff on a channel called MagiRPG. It's basically my channel. I used to just stream myself for fun, and then me and my friends just ended up playing tabletop games all the time and streaming it. So we decided to just make the channel all tabletop. So I am the we do a lot of D&D, but I am like the cyberpunk queen of the channel. I run all of our cyberpunk games over there, and I have a lot of fun with it. And I'm also a player. As Binary said, I play in the No Latency podcast as well. So both player and GM. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. It's a great show, by the way. People watching. No
Mhm.
Latency is an
Indeed.
amazing show.
It's so good.
Definitely.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
David.
Hey everybody, my name is David Gillespie. I'm with High Shelf Collective. We're a group of streamers and YouTube people that produce a bunch of content. We've been doing the cyberpunk streaming thing since, like 2019-ish. We're about to start our 4th chapter, which is actually going to be a big anthology of games. We're inviting a bunch of GMs to run games all in the same building with me. So we're really excited about that project. That's kicking off tomorrow, actually. Well, tomorrow by recording. By the time you're all watching this, it will be running for a little bit. So that'll be a lot of fun. So you can find us on High Shelf Collective, all the socials and everything. That's all there. And Cyberpunk content for as much as I can, make it happen. But we do other stuff too on that channel. So come out and find us.
The podcast too. Don't forget the podcast.
Oh my gosh, the podcast is so good. We have
It's
a whole
so
new
good.
segment.
His
It's so
podcast
fun.
is amazing, especially if you guys go to Gen Con, their Gen Con survival guide. It's like exactly what you want to hear when you're going, if you're going. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing. We're about to drop a PAX Unplugged survival guide. Since I've been there a couple of times now, we're finally ready to talk about PAX Unplugged too. So we're just gotta let people know how to get to these conventions.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, John.
You got it.
John is like the advocate for the.
I was about to say John is the hype man of all cyberpunk stuff on the internet.
John,
So
the future
Y'all remember
cyberpunk
that?
cheerleader.
yeah.
Do y'all remember that anime Samurai Champloo?
Yes,
Oh,
actually.
yeah.
And there's this one guy who had his hype squad with him.
Mhm.
Like John, your hype squad.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
It's easy to hype you guys up because you guys make great content, and I'm a big fan. So I love seeing
Stop
you
it.
guys
Stop.
do it.
Reflecting
Stop
that right
it.
back at you.
Yeah.
Just- we're all huge fans of you.
Well,
So it's-
speaking
true.
of good content, last but not least, John.
Yes, hi, my name is JonJonTheWise. If you didn't notice, I am being paid by all these folks to talk about their channels.
Checks in the
but
mail.
yeah, if you guys like Cyberpunk RED, Cyberpunk 2020, or general Cyberpunk content, I make instructional videos on my YouTube channel, JonJonTheWise, youtube.com/JonJonTheWise. And if you ever wanted to play or wrap your mind around the game and try to figure out mechanics and lore or whatever, my channel's got it all. That's what I do. I'm here to help you and hype up your Cyberpunk channel if you have one too.
And also, you have a brilliant Discord full of people
Mhm.
talking about Cyberpunk, not just like the game, but also the anime, because that's kind of in the hype at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got
your Discord rocks. I'm in it.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you. Yeah,
I'm in it
I'm
too.
Obviously, it's
hashtag
cool.
blessed. I started it with David and Luke. We just got into content. It was like 2019. Yeah, like when he just started doing all that.
Right.
And
we were all doing it together. Like, oh man, let's hack these rules into 2020. You know, we all came back from that
Yeah.
scene, and then you started the Discord with, and like it's just been so good.
it's
been
great.
amazing.
It's like an actual community where you could just come and like talk about the game. There's no like weird politics or bigotry or craziness or
No,
nothing.
everyone's really cool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We scrubbed that. We
Yeah,
scrubbed that hard.
hard, really hard.
Like people try. And we're like, no, bam.
And then they forget,
No.
like, we're from the future, so we've got all the best bots, baby.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm happy to be here. I love Cyberpunk Day. I love that you guys did it, and I'm honored to be a guest here again. So thank you so much.
Of
Yeah.
course.
I love the history of this thing.
Mhm.
Like being primarily a genre study with authors and everything like that. It's just really cool that they're bringing in the TTRPG scene and giving us a window in
Mhm.
the day. It's
Mhm.
really, really beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess I'm like the gateway for that area of expertise, the tabletop scene. So yeah, I guess I'm branching out for them. So speaking of, we're gonna be talking about game mastering in tabletop RPG sessions in a cyberpunk setting. I know we all have experience at a specific tabletop RPG rule set, which is Cyberpunk RED, which we all love and appreciate. But we're not gonna stop there. We're gonna, if you guys have experience with other rule sets in the Cyberpunk genre, feel free to add in your 2 cents or your experience from other rule sets as well. So it's not exclusively Cyberpunk RED, but if it is mostly, I'm happy if that's the case as well. So doesn't matter.
Right.
But
Yeah.
okay, so also binary. I'm gonna steal your idea with the dice rolling, so I'm gonna start rolling dice depending on the person. So
There we go.
Yeah,
It's fitting.
Best way. Makes it fair. It's the most,
Yeah.
like, it's brilliant. Love it.
The streets are unpredictable.
Yeah.
right. So
The streets.
So I'm gonna kick off with the first question, which is, I guess, pretty broad, but I guess I want to see what you guys are at with your games right now in Cyberpunk TTRPG. So, with the first question I have, in your own words, what does it mean to play a Cyberpunk tabletop RPG? And also, as a little extra, if you want to add into that answer, what should players expect when playing in this setting? So I'm gonna let you guys think for a second while I roll my D4, digital D4. Okay, number 2. I have number 2 at Tracie. So Tracie,
Ooh,
go
first
for
one.
it. There you go.
Okay. So I think for me, playing a cyberpunk tabletop RPG is a lot of it generally, obviously in most cyberpunk universes, it's a urban setting and it takes place in some sort of dark city. Of course, when we talk about Cyberpunk Red and just like Cyberpunk 2077, all that, it's Night City. But any like dark urban city, if you watch any cyberpunk show or read about a book, it's usually takes place in something like that. And I think that is always a center point for a lot of your storytelling, and a lot of what your players are going to experience is all in the city. And a lot of the players usually are fighting for a dream that they have in the city, and a lot of the times the city can crush those dreams because it's just so brutal. It's such a brutal, dark future. I mean, a lot of times you'll hear that it's the dark future. It's not a happy place. And I think, you know, there's things like corporations and you know, you want to be able to try to change the world in some way, a lot of the players, but it's very, very difficult. One thing I had discussed with my last group of players that I played Cyberpunk with is one of them said that in Cyberpunk there are no happy endings. And another argued that actually. He was like, well, actually, that's not always necessarily true. You could basically you go for what you can get. You may be happy, you might not be, but you know, you may not make any lasting change, but that's kind of, you kind of have to take what you can get from the city. And I think that's a lot where your stories and where it can a lot be centered around is that the city itself and trying to make a name for yourself. So to me, that's the other big thing. The last thing I'll say is, of course, like the style over substance that's in Cyberpunk. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you don't make it in the end, as long as you look good doing it. Like, that's always my motto. And I always try to live by that mantra when I'm playing a Cyberpunk game. It's just very much that style over substance. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Very good.
Agreed.
I love that.
Agreed.
Yes.
Who wants to follow up, or anyone has any thoughts?
That was a little long-winded, I know, but I thought
No, I
that
don't.
I had a lot
great.
to
You
say.
hit good
I don't
points.
think it was
I had a lot.
long-winded at all. I think one of the things about TTRPGs just in general is that yes, the setting may be unforgiving. The world may be full of awful people and the hope is incredibly bleak. But you're also playing with, I would assume, some people that you like or at least are friends with. And so part of being a GM and being a player is essentially kind of a hero fantasy. You know, there has to be a chance of you winning, otherwise it's not fun. Even if you fail at it, that's fine. And I think the bleakness of the world can really raise up that hero fantasy, not the power fantasy, but the hero fantasy of like, we scraped through and we had success. There were some losses, but in the end, we got the biggest piece. And that can be that can feel like a genuine accomplishment. And I think that's what I try and gear, regardless of what setting I'm in, my players too. Like, it's tough. And if you roll really, really well, you can have the perfect ending, but you have to roll perfect rolls for like an hour. Do you know what I mean? There has to be sacrifice for these stories to be interesting. Every time a TV show kind of phones in a season where just everyone's happy at the end, you're just like, you didn't know if you're going to get another season, did you? Like, you kill someone, have an NPC die, do some stuff, make a thing happen.
Yeah.
There has to be struggle, of
If
course.
you get
and-
anything from this, kill someone is
Kill
what
Yeah,
we're trying to
absolutely. There has to be struggle, of course, and
Player
the city
character in
itself.
the game, folks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, technically.
Yeah, all right. But the city itself has to have. It helps you make the stakes high, and that makes it exciting. And as a GM, you have the option of just having people really get hurt, break their legs, lose limbs, have to deal with that problem, and that can be. That's part of the tenacity of Cyberpunk that I love so much, I suppose.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Yeah. David, go ahead, please. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think I agree. You know, like the bleakness of the city. I think you could broaden it a little bit to include products like Alien, right? Like
Definitely.
that setting is just dark. You know, it's like
Yes.
economic horror kind
Yes.
of, and like they're trying to survive. And if they live, they did a good job as players.
Mhm.
You know, like if they survive, they did a great. They really accomplished something. If they survive an alien game. The other game that I really gravitate a lot to is it's a one stat game called Crash the System.
Hmm.
And it's super lightweight, super easy to get into. So if you're like, oh, I just want to fiddle with the cyberpunk genre a little bit, find Crash the System. It's super easy. And it kind of helps you build a little bit of world and play in a scenario really quick. But I like that the struggle where the players have to make tough calls, right? Like you can be heroic, but like you said, BinaryDragon, you have to kind of pick your scope. You're not going to save the world. You can maybe save yourself, maybe save someone else, but maybe not both, right? So maybe you have to sacrifice yourself so something you love gets to persist. And I really just love the kind of moral quandaries that happen in a cyberpunk game where it's like you can't win it all, so what are you going to pick? You know, and it's not going to be perfect, but you got to decide what's good enough. And that kind of grit just feels really good to run and play. And that's what I would tell players, like don't try and save the world, try and save something that is tangible to your character, and have something that you love, that your character loves, right? Like put into this world, like have a sister that you care for, have a a local rec center that you care for, something,
No, that's great. Yeah.
something that you value, and don't be like, I have no family, I have no anything to care for, I'm just a loose cannon. It's like, all right, well,
Yeah.
that character exists too, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's less meaningful to me.
Beautiful. I like that. I guess what I would say about Cyberpunk is on the macro level, you have all these organizations, you have corporations, you have organized crime, government, and there are these giant mega organizations that are just moving puzzle pieces on the board. And you're so insignificant that you can be crushed so easily. And that's where the grim dark really is. It's like how quickly a human life can be thrown away and be forgotten. That's the grim dark of cyberpunk. But on the micro level, knowing that as a player, when you're playing the game, you're thinking about how you're going to change your destiny, how you're not going to be a statistic, you're not going to be another dead gonk on the street. You're going to make a name for yourself, you're going to make a reputation, and you're going to survive besides against all odds. And because of that, you can see a lot of people, they gravitate to a gameplay where they think about what to do, all the things to do before pulling out a weapon. In a lot of RPGs, we're like, all right, roll initiative, let's do our battle, let's get our loot. In Cyberpunk, you're almost always in a situation where pulling out a weapon is serious business.
It's deadly.
And it's super deadly. Like you could get your friends killed. You know what I mean? So that's like, it's not just about you. Like, let's say you're this crazy badass that can kill anybody, your friends are not. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you have to navigate social encounters when usually that's not your thing, and you have to rely on your friends and your contacts. And because of that, Cyberpunk is more of like a human to human RPG mixed with all these cool fun ideas of technology going so fast that we can't even keep up with it. So that's what Cyberpunk is to me.
Wow. I love that everybody gave drastic different answers. I did not expect that. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved
pretty
everyone's answers too. I think it was like
really
everyone was spot on with what they said too.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, I'll pay you more.
Yeah, exactly. Binary
So-
was a little bit better.
Oh wow, we're bringing in bias here. So speaking of these different themes that we discussed right now, so what elements, or I guess themes in this case, do you think are necessary to have in a cyberpunk tabletop game session? And again, so elements can mean tone, characters, items, etc. Okay, so Banner, go.
I think it all boils down to one thing for me:
Mhm.
humanity
Mm.
and the soul. I think
Mhm.
in a city that is so focused on draining people of their individuality and then enabling them to have an individuality completely based on a product, in a world where in a corporate world where you exist, that even affects like the Badlands and the other areas that are kind of known lore in Cyberpunk Red, Texas, for example. Yeah, humanity. Like, what is
Well,
how much can you hold on to your
yeah.
actual individuality, and
Yeah.
how can you, as you said earlier, John, not just become a statistic? I love that. And I
Mhm.
think that for me is what for me made me excited about the video game, for example, and what makes the anime interesting,
Mhm.
and the core rule book, and even like the new book, like Tales of the Red, yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Damn, well, you just answered that. Like, that was like the key right there. That's it.
It's
We're
like a stab.
done.
It's so
Yeah.
central to the thing, like
Yeah,
losing
no.
humanity. Like John,
Yeah.
you did that video about cyberpsychosis, and like
Mhm.
how close you can get to losing your mind. And by mind, you mean your character sheet. Bye.
Yeah. That's it. It's gone.
Your
It's the
agency,
GMs now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like the angle of humanity a lot. I mean, even in the other examples of like Alien, they play with that with the synthetics
Mhm.
that are around, right? It
Mhm.
makes us kind of question humanity, right? And then like what people would do for the dollar versus for
Right.
their fellow person, right? And then the other piece I would maybe tack on there around like just tone, and this is something that's unique to gaming. Okay, this is like, because we're playing a role-playing game, you get to do something that a book does not get to do, or a movie doesn't get to do, is you get to have that like campfire moment
Mhm.
where all of your players and GM are telling this story together in this like kind of turn-based way. You're all suspending some disbelief, you're all adding a little bit of juice to each other's stories, you're picking on each other's backstories and all that kind of stuff. This is one of the things that I love about the TTRPG angle in Cyberpunk, is that we get to have this collaborative storytelling vibe where
Mhm.
my cyberpunk and John cyber and all of our cyberpunks get to share space at the table together and create something that's you wouldn't get in a book, right? And like maybe everybody at the table lives because we all don't want to kill our friend player characters, but by golly, they're gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
they're gonna risk death,
Oh,
right?
you spent $120 on really good art for this character. No one's killing it yet.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Sometimes that's the role, yeah.
Mhm.
But that kind of like, just trumpet home for the GMs out there that are thinking about this, is bask in those campfire moments with your players,
Mhm.
because that's where you're going to find that humanity. That's where you're going to find the things that they love that you can then put at risk as the GM, right? Because that's always the thing, is like, oh, you love the like old lady who lives next door to y'all, cool. Yeah, there's a fixer that's trying to horn in on her like apartment, and what are y'all going to do about it, right? Like, that's a whole plot right there, is like, what do you love, cool, how can I put that at risk,
Yeah.
and run with it, kind of thing.
Yeah. To add to that, I think, and just like a general thing to add to this question is just, again, building those relationships between different characters and even NPCs within the world. One thing I think, I guess, as far as what is good to have for sessions is definitely, and just in general for tabletop games, is to have like a session zero where you take time to plan things out with your fellow players, the GM and the players, and we talk about, hey, maybe these two characters had a relationship, maybe they're brother and sister, maybe they're lovers, ex-lovers, maybe, and similar things. Like, trying to build that a little bit more, I think, is very crucial for your world and world building, is to create some sort of elements of relationships and connections really to the world. I would say that that's a really important thing to have, and just to kind of discuss that with the group beforehand, and then as you're playing, like David said, you can build on that in that collaborative storytelling element. Maybe something happens, you get to see how those relationships expand as you play each session. And that's one of my favorite things, is just building on those relationships.
Yeah, that's good. I love that, especially with the life path system. You can always find somebody in somebody's life path to fill a role that you need in your campaign. And it plays like double, triple effects. It's like exactly the kind of NPC I needed, and it's connected to my players. So,
The best bad guys always come out of the life path system.
yeah,
Like, oh
yeah.
yeah, this person, they hate you specifically.
Yes, just you. Yeah. I guess if anything I would add is definitely in cyberpunk games, I think tension and is really important, and obstacles as well, and how your players navigate through them. I think like perfect scenario, if you guys have ever seen the movie Inglorious Bastards, you know, any of those like scenes where they're sitting at the table and everyone's sweating because you know, like the one at the bar, or when Hans was at the farmer's house, like if you can simulate that kind of tension where the players and the NPCs are like, you know, tennis match at each other, that is like peak cyberpunk.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with pulling out a gun. It has nothing to do with martial arts or anything. That's the human to human tension situation. And I just love throwing obstacles when my players are like comfortable and they're just like chatting and having a good time and having a laugh. And then just like around the corner, Max Tack pulls up and they think like one of the players looks a little bit iffy. That's the kind of obstacle I love throwing it at my players. They're not necessarily going to kill them or anything, but it's something they have to deal with. So that's my answer.
That's actually a good follow up to the next question. Now that John, you added, you know, encounters and different paths and adventures or whatnot, we want to call them that. What are the few things that you guys make sure that you always want to add into your sessions? And I know not all sessions are the same, or not all sessions are going to be the same, but what are the sessions that you make sure that your players want to experience in these encounters and different conversations or exchanges you want with your NPCs, for example?
Yeah. Go ahead, please, David. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, you know, whenever you're putting together an NPC, they have to feel like a real person, right? This is a modern day or near future game. This is not like they're playing some elven archetype. They're playing a person with some sense of family, right? Some sense of obligation. And so they need to have like vices. They need to have things that they care deeply for. Maybe they're hiding it from the players, but as a GM, be ready to throw one of those out, right? And just like have that kind of realness about the NPCs and about like the thing they're going to interact with, even if they're interacting with like a megacorp. The megacorps are terrifying, right? But you know, they're departmentalized. The person you're talking to might be trying to get their bosses killed so they can get that position. You know, like there's stuff going on in these monolithic organizations that you can dole out to the players and give context and give like just life to your scene by saying, yeah, this is a human you're talking to, even if you hate them, even if they're like Maelstrom and they're just going to take you apart for your chrome. Right now they're not doing that because you have something or something like that. Make the Maelstrom gang like have some nuance, have some intricacies between them, and that gives the players like just a really strong sense that your world is alive and that the people that they're talking to are real. And it doesn't have to be much, just like one or two little things, like, oh, you catch a flirty glance between these two or something like that. Just a little bit of juice is all it needs to suddenly change that whole scene on its head and really give like the other NPCs in that scene just way more weight than a transactional like, oh, we just want to buy the MacGuffin so that we can move on or whatever, you know, like you can do a lot with that, with just a couple little things here and there. And I'll just like throw that out as like a little thing for everybody else to go through.
Yeah, I feel like cyberpunk genre in general is one of my favorite genres to create NPCs, because you can just create such unique and wildly interesting characters in your city. Like if your players want to go to a bar, which somehow my players always want to end up going to a bar or a club, obviously, and so it's like, okay, well, we have to build out this club, and what kind of interesting characters are going to be in this club that they can meet? Can it be somebody with like prosthetic elf ears, or something that just really, again, makes them very, you could just come up with so many fun and creative ideas for NPCs, and like Dave said, making it feel alive, and just having those types of quirky characters ready for your players to interact with, I think is something that's really fun. And just coming up with really eclectic NPCs is something that's always fun to do.
Those are the best ones because
Yes.
they're so crazy.
Yes.
Like you see something in a movie and you're like, oh my god, that would be a great like bartender at my bar.
You can riff from all those sources, right, and just put all of those in. It's like, oh man, like this one super interesting person, you're like, I've got to get them into my game. Like they're totally an NPC. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, I definitely steal ideas from a lot of media, unintended. Like no, like there's the movie Tron Legacy, which is actually one of my like, I know that I feel like it's a cult classic now. The story,
it's a good movie,
maybe, but like there's I've started to design a bar that's like the end of line club in that one, and where the owner is that super excited. I forget his Martin Sheen or Michael Sheen. I forget which Sheen it is. Michael Sheen, who plays Castor. He's this very eclectic like bar owner. Like to me, that's like a kind of a cyberpunk setting in itself. Like that's like, it's very much like, like this bar is somewhere in my city. So yes. So yeah, it's always fun to get inspiration from other things.
The thing I try and bring to every session, and I mean the sessions for No Latency are a little bit different because we play like it's an episode, so we try and we very quickly understand that our beats have to be about an hour ish, but other than that, which is kind of not as important, the thing I try and bring to every game, because I do plan a lot actually, is we have fun NPCs, but it's the location itself. I plan the map, I draw it out, I design rooms and stuff. We have sometimes little things on the ground, and I say to the players, if you can see it on the map, that is passive perception worthy. You can just see it, comment on it, ask questions. And that kind of encourages the kind of Scooby-Doo aspect of like, let's go on a mystery hunt. And I like that. And so I put little Easter eggs in things and hidden stuff on the map. And if people see it, great. If they don't, then they don't. And that's fine. And I don't push it. I learned very early on not be like, I mean, you've stepped on some things there on the ground right there. It's boring. Nobody likes that. But truly, what it boils down to, the thing I bring to almost every single place is a bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you plan a location, you have to plan for some shit, quite literally, right? And it's funny how when you think about a location that you're going to, you have to remember that the place has a purpose. So the place should represent the purpose that it is, which is part of the discovery. And in one of the side quests we did, I forgot to put a bathroom on a warehouse, and so I just plonked a porta potty behind the building. One of my players locked someone in it and kicked it over.
Yes.
Oh my god,
it was really funny.
That happened in one of my games.
No,
too.
it happened
Somebody
with
put
you,
locks
John.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It wasn't you. It was Retro. But you were in that session.
That's right. I was in that one.
Yes.
I've had whole negotiations go down in bathrooms.
Yes.
Yeah,
we had that too.
Such a central, for some reason, stuff happens. Like when people are like, "Oh, we're in this very important building. Let's go to the bathroom and like plan something," and you go. Was like
that's right.
Well, yeah. It's a great place to have an interrogation. We had an exec go into the bathroom and we cornered them in the belly because it's like a vulnerable spot where you can.
But I think remembering that this is a place that existed is kind of what I'm getting at. Like you've got to have a bathroom. There's got to be like somewhere to put your coat. There's a place where all the wires go.
It's that mundane shit. It's that mundane stuff.
Yes.
Like you're circling around this, like the value of mundane in your game. You cannot understate that, folks. It is so good.
Yeah.
100%.
I know. I don't think you thought that porta potty was going to be anything, and it became
I
like
just finished the map. I'm like, oh balls! I didn't make it.
we came back to it. Like we came back to it later in the session
Mhm.
too. The guy was still in there. It was great. Oh man. If I were to add anything to what everybody said, is what I bring to every session. First of all, I map out the entire campaign, not like super detailed. I just do beginning, middle, end. That's it. 3 points, bullet points, and then I look at all of my players' backstories, and I try to pick out elements from their backstory to weave into everything. So we're kind of exploring their backstory, an element of their backstory, and moving the plot along. So it's like an A-B plot kind of thing going on for all the players. Then I look at how each player likes to play with their play style. Are they combat focused? Do they like to do, social encounters? And I make sure that if this session they didn't get the thing they want and we didn't explore their backstory, then next session we will explore part of their backstory, or at least play their play style. So that way everybody is having fun either playing their play style or exploring something in their backstory that is an interesting character development.
Nice.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something, John. You mentioned tension earlier. I was just thinking about this, like something to bring into your games. In like a fantasy game or in another genre, it's very common that like once the fight is done, the players like loot the field and all that kind of stuff. And like there should be some of that in Cyberpunk, but like GMs push them off of that, right? Bring in a time crunch. There's gangs that are coming in to loot the field, right? And they're powerful. They're not all shot up. There's max tack coming in. There's trauma. Don't let them just sit there.
There is self-destruct.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
is
There has to be
most
some
fun
sort
thing.
of like
Self-destruct has been initiated.
You have to
Run.
you have to keep the pace moving, right? And don't let every episode be a looting episode and a shopping episode. Like you got to keep it.
Can
moving,
happen
folks.
very quickly. Yeah,
exactly. Like they got urgency, right? Tension and urgency are super important in these games.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, your characters, their adrenaline is pumping. They're getting into a firefight in the middle of the street. It's loud. There's smoke. There's blood. Like the last thing they're thinking is, oh, what kind of cyberware does this guy have on his leg? You know what I mean? They're like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah, definitely.
The best, like, I'm going to loot all the cyberware. I was like, all right, you have seconds. What do you do? And they're like, I guess I chop off his arms. Like, all right, better roll. It's like, oh, why? It's like, well, if you do it wrong, then the whole cyberware is ruined. Suddenly there's risk.
Yeah.
They don't just get to have everything.
You can't pull it off.
No.
Yeah, and then your greed is putting everybody else in danger because you want to sit there and like try to.
That's right. Turn your players on each other. That's very good, John.
This is some good advice. Yeah.
He wants the arm. Maelstrom's coming. What do you want me to do?
Tension.
That's actually something. I mean, I know this is in regards to games, which is very interactive, but even when you're watching a movie or a TV series or reading a book, one thing that readers or viewers always come back to is conflict. You want to see conflict. No one really cares about, oh, how was your work, John? Was it good? What'd you do today? Well, how's the weather today? Like nobody wants to talk about that. They just want to.
Tell me your road rage incident.
Yeah.
I want to hear about the road rage incident.
Your conflict doesn't have to be combat.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's important. Like it's an entire session where you end up just role playing your way through a situation, rolling skills to convince people or stealth around. Those are so much fun.
Yeah.
I love a player
my
who's
favorite.
trying not to fight.
Yeah. Or bullshitting your way through like an authority figure, like we did in our game, Paris. Where the police chief was like, "Who the hell are you guys?" And then he rolled a 1.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So yeah.
So yes, going into now more into the player characters, which is what we're probably experts at this point, where we need to probably drive them to different locations in different scenarios. But how do these player characters differ from different genres in tabletop RPGs? Let's say a medieval fantasy or a modern, tabletop game. Like, how do they differ? Like, what needs to be set to make it feel like it's a cyberpunk game?
I think, just to start it, the easiest way to make it feel cyberpunk is, even if they're like an exec or like whatever, somebody who would have like a lot of clout or be on the up and coming, they need to not feel like kings. They need to feel like their whole situation is at risk. They're scrappy, right? I mean, it needs to feel like they don't have a path to becoming CEO. They'll never be that, right? That'll never be in the cards for them. So what is in the cards for them needs to be a lot more, I don't know, closer to like tangible, right? Closer to like real life. That's the characters in this game, they need to feel like, going all the way back to like Neuromancer, right? Like Case the hacker, he was a fuck up. Like, I'm sorry to cuss, but like he was not like, he was never going to be anything, right? But he was really good at what he did, and that's powerful. That's just really, really great storytelling, in my view.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like cyberpunk characters, that what they differ from other RPGs and other genres is reputation means a lot more for them.
Yeah.
Their characters' reputation, or in their tangible world around them, because as vast as these cyberpunk cities are, it's a really small world when you're in the edge running business and you're working with fixers and contacts and corrupt politicians, etc. And because the players are so immersed in that world, they become so invested in these characters, and you see people navigating these situations in ways where they're like, what would I do? Like, what would I seriously do if I was in this bar sitting next to Rogue, this fixer from Cyberpunk 2020, that 25 years later she's giving me a job? You know what I mean? Those that kind of immersion, it also leads to, like, when there's character death, it really hits hard. It hits hard because you're so invested in this character, you didn't even think once of rolling another character because you're like, I have so much more to live for with this character, and that's when it really hurts.
Cyberpunk Red doesn't have bring people back to life.
No resurrections. No.
There's no resurrection.
No magic.
There's no spell.
No.
Like, even in the video game, like the video game's a ghost story, right? I mean, essentially, like, what is an AI that came from a human other than just a ghost of them? It seems, which I loved as a theme. The characters themselves each have their own place in the world. They can create ripples in their own unique way, and that's the thing I like about it. Other TTRPGs are great, play in some D&D, you have a good time, but ultimately you're all just adventurers. Whereas in Cyberpunk Red, there's always a wrinkle to what you want. Everyone wants the same thing, but everyone's why is different, and I find that fascinating. Like, execs want a bit of extra money so they can pay someone enough to climb a ladder, for example. Or a media really just wants to get a scoop and then get rid of these guys. A medtech wants to see as much damage so they can learn more damage, kind of stuff. Like, everyone's different. Different people. Like, some people just don't loot because they don't need to. All they care about is money. And that's so interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I like to use the coworkers analogy. Like, you guys aren't best friends, but you're coworkers. And you know that you can get the things done together. Maybe you are best friends. I'm just saying you don't have
friends. But you don't have to start as.
You don't have to start.
The last thing I'll add to this is something we talked about earlier in our discussion, but just to reiterate it, is elements like empathy and humanity are huge core in Cyberpunk, and don't always exist in other tabletop games. A lot of times you don't have, in Cyberpunk Red, there's literal mechanics for humanity loss and a stat for empathy. So
therapy. Everyone should go to therapy.
And therapy. Yes, there actually is a whole section where you can work on that through therapy. So that's really cool that exists in Cyberpunk. But that's not always something that you think about in other tabletop games. So making sure your players really feel the effects of their choices. If they're going to, get more and more cyberware, and they could they become more and more Borg-like that make them feel the weight of that, and just in general decisions that they make. And I think that that's something that is also just really important to think about. And I love that element of it in Cyberpunk.
Yeah, well said.
100%.
Awesome.
Mhm.
So we're gonna go ahead with the last two questions, but I think I'll start with the more fun one, which I know Tracie talked about a little bit, which is inspiration from different media in Cyberpunk. So I just want to go ahead and just go through everyone's mind and see what are your inspirations, like what movies you like to watch, what books you want to read, or comic books, whatever. It doesn't have to be anything specific. So who wants to go first?
I'll start. I get a lot of inspiration. Like I said, I get inspiration from everything. I'm not a very original person, so I'm always stealing stuff and stealing ideas. Getting inspiration, I should say, is very good. I think there are a lot of great cyberpunk animes out there. Obviously, this new Cyberpunk Edge Runner just came out, but a lot of older anime as well. One of my favorites, obviously the big ones we know, like Ghost in the Shell and Akira, are great just to get your mind. Like, watch those before you run a game and it gets your head in there. One of my favorite animes is called Psychopaths, and it is super cyberpunk anime, and talk about things like cyber psychosis and stuff like that. It definitely kind of talks on those elements quite a bit. So I love to watch like super cyberpunk animes to get my head like in the space before I run games.
Awesome, great, that's good. Have you watched Ergo Proxy, by the way?
A very long time ago. I should
Okay.
rewatch that one, actually.
It's a good one. Yeah, good anime.
Mm-hmm.
Who else wants to jump in?
I'll go ahead. So I like to, just like Tracie said, definitely, like, I get inspiration from everything. Like, any show, any genre, it doesn't matter if there's people in it, it's gonna relate to my cyberpunk game. Like, for example, Heart of the Dragon, the new Game of Thrones show. It's all politics. It's all who's going to be king, this and that. That's exactly how a corporation would run. A giant corporation like Arasaka, if you have a dynasty inside of it, the bloodline, who moves forward, who's the number two guy. These are all things that happen in a corporation that are exactly like Heart of the Dragon. But mainly where I get most of my inspiration, where it's like practical inspiration, is from my players' backstories. The game does such a good job of building a backstory where we have a story about your character before we even roll dice for the first time, and we can make a whole campaign just on one part of your backstory. You know what I mean? So I'll definitely look at my players' backstories and look for some ideas there that we can possibly all explore as a party.
I get a lot of inspiration from some different places. But also I'm weird because I came from acting. Like, I enjoy the role-playing aspect of TTRPGs more than anything else. And so instead of, when I'm planning stuff or trying to make sure that there's some kind of pull towards a bigger task, perhaps, I think of the why more than anything. Why is this place here? Why would they go here? How can I tempt them? But why? Why would they want to? And constantly, everything, whether it's like just designing a map or even, writing out a little description for something, making an NPC, if it doesn't have a why, I get rid of it. And that's more of just like a base GM thing than anything else. Why is something that makes me excited, and I see that reflected in my players, and so I just continue to do it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add here is I used to pull a lot more from like movies and comics and things like that. And this might be a little depressing, but folks, I'm just pulling from the news at this point. Like
It's true. Oh my god,
that's depressing, dude.
There's this look. I mean, the genre of cyberpunk was started because we wanted to explore what happens when like capitalism and corporations run amok under like a new economic system, right? Reaganomics and all that kind of stuff.
Oh wait, it wasn't just It wasn't just a prediction of the future
It's
that's
not.
true.
It's not just.
Yeah.
It's not just in the
No.
game.
No,
huh?
no. I mean, there's a lot of accuracy. It missed some marks, right? There's some topics that Cyberpunk never really gets into in a literary sense that your table can
Yeah.
address. But like,
Mm.
I just look at the news sometimes. Like, I got really enthralled in this like giant saltwater crocodile that literally has been like rumored to eat 300 people in the real world.
What?
And so I'm
No
like, oh my
way.
god, that thing lives in Night City. And maybe it's
Some
some
crazy
sort of
person.
crocodile. Maybe it's a person. Who knows? We'll find out.
Yeah.
You know, like that kind of
That's
stuff.
actually great.
I just
Yeah.
whatever, right? Like you even say
will say-
wherever, but like
Oh, no,
I just
continue.
look at the news and it's like, come on, there's some gold in there.
Yeah.
It's sometimes fun. I remember in the early part of season 1, I pulled the lobby gunfight scene from The Matrix,
Oh yeah.
and I just set up the map
Oh,
and
yeah.
had security at the end and 8 pillars,
Oh,
and
yeah.
just was like, I looked at my players and was like, "You think?" And 2 of them got it immediately,
Mhm.
immediately,
Yeah.
and they had a great time just sort of getting to just play that scene, but as their own characters. And sometimes that's fun. So be blatant about it. Why not? You're having fun.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes you read a news headline and you're like, dude, that's a cyberpunk.
Oh,
Yeah, I
cyberpunk
know.
story right there.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Mhm.
some
There's
politician
one.
went missing. Awesome. That's a whole campaign.
That's
right there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually a big inspiration from the project that I just recently worked on, which actually John and David helped me out a little bit, Mega Building 1.
Oh yeah.
As depressing as it sounds, where I live, which is Puerto Rico, it's actually inspired by Puerto Rico, where I live. The governments,
Mm.
the politics, everything in between, how it works and how they, do their things. I'm not going to go into much of politics, but yeah, nowadays, a lot of politics, a lot of governments around the world are kind of dystopia, which is crazy. I mean, we don't have the high tech, but we definitely have the low life in a lot of cities,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk
Which
is a political genre, and there is
Mhm.
no
Yeah, oh,
nobody can
yes.
tell me otherwise. It is political
Absolutely.
at its core. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to like dive into the politics, but you're a victim of it no matter
Yes.
what in the game.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
Yep. In some
that's
way,
crazy.
shape, or form is gonna be in players' face at some point, right? So,
Right.
which is interesting. Okay, so the last question, depending on how much time we go through it. So, what are your guys' favorite tabletop RPGs in the Cyberpunk setting? I know everyone's is Cyberpunk RED.
Yeah. So first for
So-
all of us, is Cyberpunk RED.
That's-
Yeah, can we just take that one off the
Easy
bottom?
answer.
Tick, 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 tick.
Yes.
So what's our number 2?
There you go. There you go. David got ahead. So number 2s, number 3s, 4s, whatever. Which
Not-
TTRPGs are?
Not necessarily Cyberpunk Red, but I really like Scum and Villainy.
Scum and Villainy is great.
It's so
Scum and Villainy is fun. It's a fun sci-fi adventure, and I
Yeah.
recommend checking it out.
Yeah. I'll go back to not Lasers and Feelings. That's the
That's good too.
starter for that. But Crash the System, the one stat system.
Yeah, the one you're saying.
Anybody who's like, I've never done a game before. I've never done. It's like here. It's a one sheet of piece of paper. You have one stat. Go nuts. You can't go wrong. That's my number 2, and I think my number 3 is probably like, probably Vert. Vert is another kind of funky out there cyberpunk game. It's just, I don't know. It's different but similar. There are like, there's this weird like drug scene and like dog people, and I don't know. It's just got some interesting like stuff going on in Vert that I've really enjoyed. I haven't gotten to play it, but I've been exploring it quite a bit on my spare time. So obviously Cyberpunk RED, but there's some other good ones out there.
The only other really big Cyberpunk tabletop is Shadowrun. That I've played a lot of the video games, but it's also, of course, a tabletop game. And basically, it's nice because it's like if you want fantasy in Cyberpunk, like playing an elf in Cyberpunk, which I love because I also am a huge fan of fantasy as a genre. So having that, merged together is always fun. So it's been a while since I've played Shadowrun, but I would say that's probably my other favorite.
Nice.
Awesome.
I wish I could say another RPG, but I've only played a handful of RPGs. I'm not as well. My horizons are not as broad as you guys, unfortunately. But if I were to pick something other than Red, it would definitely be 2020,
There you go.
Cyberpunk 2020. I played it for years. It's the first RPG I've ever played, and I had a GM that was ruthless, so it was. I have a lot of good memories with that game, and obviously I am where I am with my channel because of that game.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's fun to go back and look at all the jankiness and crunch that it had, and remember that it was a product of its time.
Yeah.
And it could still be played to this day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. It's
And
always great.
Go
Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, another game that comes to mind is Necromunda.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I
good
like
skirmish.
Necromunda, actually, a lot.
Like grimdark.
Yeah.
Everything there is good.
Love Warhammer. Yeah,
That
obviously.
one in
it's my-
specific,
Yeah.
I think, isn't Necromunda like just a big tech city?
It's
that
like
you-
gangs. It's gangs in the.
Yeah,
that's
it's a hive
played it a
world
lot.
setting, so it's like
Should know
yeah,
this.
it's totally cyberpunk.
Yep.
Totally
Very
cyberpunk.
cool though. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't there another like minis game that is akin to that?
There
I'm-
is. I cannot.
Yes, and it launched on Kickstarter, and it's really good.
Combat
Combat
Zone.
Zone.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
there we
yes.
go.
Monster
Yeah,
Fight Club.
Monster
That's
Fight
the
Club
one.
put that out.
Yeah, that's good
right,
too.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not out yet, but when it comes out, I'll have 1,000 minis to paint
Yes.
because I got like a crazy backer.
Ooh, can't wait to see that.
And it's not 1,000, but yeah. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we're out of questions. We're out of time. But before we end, I just want to go around the table again. Just go and give everyone just one last line for any advice for new GMs or new players that want to go into the cyberpunk world or genre. So quickly, one liner around the table, starting with Binary. Go.
Just start rolling dice. Do it.
Mhm.
It's fun.
Great advice.
Tracie.
Don't be intimidated. If I can do it, you can. I was always afraid of GMing for the longest time. I was always a player. Don't be intimidated. Just do it and have fun. Find communities that are super encouraging, like John's Discord. There's a lot of great subreddits. Just find communities that you can get involved in and start there, and then just run a game. And it's just do it, Nike.
David.
Okay. You could literally run a whole game off of one scene you have in your head. Run the scene. What are the consequences of that scene? That's your next scene. What are the consequences of that scene? That's your next scene. All right? You can just steamroll a whole campaign off of the fallout of those players doing well or doing poorly in whatever scene you've got. Just don't think you have to plan a ton of stuff out. Just get it going. And it's a really, really fun, rewarding experience.
Awesome.
Yeah, do not over prepare. That is the bane of every game master. You'll
You and I
have
both do that.
analysis.
Oh,
yeah,
overprepare.
I know.
No,
Everybody-
it's okay.
yeah,
If it makes you
the-
feel better, do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you like,
You don't need to.
Yeah, if it'll make you feel better that we all do
Yes,
it. and
every
we all tell
GM
you
has
don't.
that problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, so you don't want to get analysis by paralysis,
yeah.
whatever. I mess. You know what I mean. But you don't want
Mm.
that to happen. You want to just be able to do what Binary said, is roll dice, and what Tracie and David are saying as well. You just want to be able to just play the game, be confident, and roll the dice, because at the end of the day, you're there to have fun. That's number one. And that is the most important rule of playing Cyberpunk. The rule of cool. Do the thing that's cool.
It's in the book.
Do the thing
Mhm.
that's cool. Every story has a beginning, middle,
Mhm.
and an end. Just
Mhm.
remember that. That's 3 scenes. That's all you need.
yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. It was great hearing you talking about Cyberpunk and the TTRPG scene. We'll be adding their socials in the description later on in YouTube, so make sure to check their accounts and their socials out. They have a bunch of great content, podcasts, lessons, you name it. So make sure to check them out. Thank you guys so much, and happy Cyberpunk Day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.